Hey there everyone, Paller here, and welcome back. Today we're doing a Hey What's That? Rimworld. So before we dive into this, just for disclosure purposes, Rimworld is in early access. So this is a alpha build, beta build. It's a mostly complete build, but things that you see here are subject to change. And they've been patching it quite a bit. A lot of small patches. Like every 2 or 3 days, you get a really small patch, just tweaking some bugs, fixing some bugs, tweaking some elements, and moving on. Now, I'm gonna actually do a video on it today because, well, while it is still in early access and it's definitely not complete, mechanically it is mostly there. I would say it seems 80 to 90% mechanically complete, with some tweaks to the UI, some tweaks to the difficulty. I think the game is basically ready to go. I haven't done a whole lot of research on this game. I'm going to be very honest here. As this type of game, I like to learn as I go. You know, the first time I went out, I played the game, I died within the first day and a half of being in there. The second time I survived like 3 days. And I like to learn that way. So I'm not going out and looking for I'm not like going to the forums or anything for information because I'd rather just learn it as I play. So I've been kind of sheltering myself from any of that information. But from what I can tell, again, the game is mostly mechanically there. I'm not too worried about putting out a video on it because I don't think there's going to be any drastic changes. So what is Rimworld? Well, Rimworld is a updated version or a futuristic take on Dwarf Fortress. More particularly a futuristic take on Nomeria, in my opinion. But Nomeria took the Dwarf Fortress concept and gave it a UI overhaul. If you've never seen Dwarf Fortress, it's mostly ASCII characters. There's no real animated characters. Your things are pixelated dots that move here or there, and your ramps are one symbol or it's a different symbol. Well, it takes that, Nomeria takes that and puts it out into a far more easily approachable, graphical, visually driven game, right? Well, this takes that formula that Nomeria has and takes it to the future. So the whole concept, at least the base concept of Rimworld, is you are in a spaceship that's crashed, or you're in escape pods coming from a spaceship that's burning up in the atmosphere. And you land on a Rimworld with very little population on it, no real centers of industry, and you gotta, like, in a tribe, you gotta set up a living, habitable situation, sustainable situation with food and medicine and protection from raids, and then you want to build back up to where you can build a spaceship and get off planet. So that's the whole concept, where like Nomeria and everything, they might go up to like flintlock pistols. They do have some basic machinery and everything. In this, you're going to be building air conditioners. You're going to eventually have like exoskeleton combat suits that you can get. You're going to have defensive turrets that you can put down to protect your system. It's almost Nomeria crossed with Serenity, but Firefly, or there was that sci-fi show that had the video game tie-in. I forget what it's called. I always forget its name. It started with a D. It wasn't Divergence. It was something with a D. I think it's been canceled. It was under the St. Louis Arch. Anyway, it has like a field, like a world to like that type of field. There's definitely alien creatures around, and there's some weird things. There's a lot of familiarity, but there's also just enough difference to kind of make it very interesting. So as we go through this, the gameplay you're going to watch in the background, or have been watching, is fast forwarded of me playing for about an hour and 20 minutes. And I'm doing this because I want you to see how a level plays out. So I'm going to compress it down as much as I can without it being unwatchable. But I will edit out sections here to get it to fit in and everything. Because I want you to see what happens at the end, because this is going to come into my one big complaint about the game right now. But that's basically the core concept of the game. I just want to explain the footage in the background. The game also has very much a prison architect visual appearance to it. In fact, when I first saw it, I thought it was by the guys that made Prison Architect. It's actually not, but it's the characters and all of that are very much Prison Architect. Even the panels with which you look at the characters and the stats reminds me all of Prison Architect, which I'm okay with. You know, as long as they didn't steal it and Prison Architect people are okay with it, I'm fine with it. I like this little janky paper mache type appearance to the game. It works well for me as someone that likes Prison Architect. But that's the base way to describe it. Take Nomeria, throw a little bit of Firefly in there with graphics from Prison Architect, and you know what we're dealing with. Now, the game does have some other interesting twists. One of the big things that first took me to get used to was, unlike Nomeria, unlike Dwarf Fortress, unlike towns, there's no digging down or up. Everything is on one central Z plane. There's no elevation changes, at least not that I have found in the game yet. You will be mining into walls. Compacted steel is a very common material that you need, and most of your components are going to come from steel and everything. So you are going to be doing a lot of mining for steel, but there's no Z in the game right now, and that's weird. It's fine once you get used to it. It's perfectly good, but it does mean a lot of times, like, when you pick your world spot where you're going to spawn at, you need to take this into account. And we should talk about how the world plays out, the world spawn. So when you first go to set up a new mission, you have a bunch of different options, and it's quite in depth. Initially, first you get to pick the type of scenario that you want to have. By default, the game now has 3 different scenarios. They have the one I described earlier where you're coming down in escape pods, survivals from a crash. They have another game mode where you have a single, well, the first game mode has 3 people that you start off with. Second game mode starts off with 1 person, but a whole lot of resources. They have a lot more at their disposal. And the third game mode is actually Lost Tribe. So it starts off with 5 people, but they don't have any of the technologies research. You basically start at kind of the Bronze Age. It's further ahead than the Bronze Age, but initially you're going to be making bow and arrows and clubs. Now, you still will eventually get up to where you're making guns and all that other stuff. In fact, you can get there relatively quickly, but you do start off very minimalistic as like a tribe would. Those are the 3 base game modes. You can go into a custom editor and you can adjust how the game mode plays out. You can change how many people you start with. You can change conditions that'll happen within the map, either add them in, increase their frequency, or reduce their frequency. And there's a lot of options here that you can really dive into. I don't really worry about it too much, as the base ones are fine for me. I've mainly done, I did the 3, the traditional game mode, which is going to be what you see here in the background. I've also done Tribe quite a bit, where you start off with 5 people, which is a lot of fun. So you get that, you create your scenario however you want. From there, you choose an AI. So the game has 3 different AIs, and it basically just chooses how crazy the AI is going to be. So you have the default AI, where it's going to be mostly predictable things going along. You're going to see, heat waves in the summer and blights and stuff. And occasionally they'll throw you a random curveball in there, something crazy that you've never seen before. But for the most part, it's kind of predictable as you would go. The second AI is very much the same way, but with far less frequency, or supposed to be far less frequency between the events that happen. You also shouldn't be seeing any like crazy late game events early on. The third AI then is off the walls crazy. He will summon random stuff whenever he wants to, and you're gonna spend a lot of time really outgunned. I don't know how, with how the game is balanced right now, I don't know how anyone could play through that one, though I'm sure somebody has done it. So you have the 3 different AIs, and the AIs do have different difficulties on them. After you've selected your AI, you then select a spawn area. So you generate a map. I'm going to go ahead and generate a map just based off Pallor, and you get the world map and everything that you can see. And you can click around here wherever you want, and you can see what base idea of what it is. Mountainous, flatland, hilly, swamp, Arctic tundra. And the keys that you're going to be looking for here is you want to see what your grow season is and what your average temperatures are, because heat stroke and snow and ice and all those things will affect your citizens. They're going to have a whole lot of trouble with that. So you want to have some idea of what it is you're getting into. Also, the further north you spawn, the shorter your growing season. If you're far north and in mountains, you might not have a grow season at all, which means you basically have to get hydroponics going if you want to grow any type of food or anything. Very, very tough to do. Further south you go, you get a longer grow season, but then you have to deal with other different things like those heat waves I've been talking about. So you can click around, select it. I'm just going to hit the random button a few times until I see something that has at least hills, because like I said, you're going to be mining for materials. You're going to be going for that compacted steel. So you want at least hills. You want to have something there that you can mine. Or mountainous is also really good. Going pure flatland can leave you short on resources pretty quick, to where the only way to get certain things like steel is to trade for them, at least as far as I've learned in the game, which can be troublesome. After you've done that, then you get to the interesting part. This is going to be the part that a lot of people like, though it's going to also annoy people. The character creation. There's a lot of really awesome things that can be done with the character creation, but it's all done randomly. So that's what's going to annoy people. You can, from what I can tell, in the background, somewhere in the background, there's like a D&D style character creation list, and there's a whole bunch of different traits and attributes and everything that can be selected, and you only have so many points to put into it. But you can take some negatives, like you can make your character ugly. By making them ugly, you'll gain some more talent points that you can put into something else to get more skills. So you can get characters that are either can only do 2, maybe 3 things, but they do those 2 or 3 things really, really well, but they're useless everywhere else. Or you can get a character that can do just about everything, but does nothing really well, isn't very passionate about it. But you have to do it all through the random button. So you just keep hitting random until you get a character that you want. And that's the basic way I figured out. Something I hope that they do add in later on is custom character creation, where you can go in and do more than just change the name, but actually lay out the points yourselves. It's not something I would actually use, but I imagine a lot of people would, and having it would be a good thing. Once you've gotten your characters, be it 1, 3, 5, however many characters you need, you go ahead and click play, and it's going to launch you in, where we're now back to where the video would have started off at, beginning on the Rimworld. And from here on, it's a relatively straightforward, if reasonably well done, enjoyable Dwarf Fortress style game. You know, you gotta start off with, need to find some shelter for your people. You need to give them a place to sleep. If you're in the north, you're probably gonna need to give them some sort of heat or something. You need to set up some way of food, so some type of farm system or hunting system in order to get your character's food. Then you're gonna start wanting to build structures and everything. You have to store items like cloth and food and med kits. If they're left out in the open sky, they deteriorate slowly, so you got to get them indoors into a stockpile and everything, and you build it out from there. And like I said at the beginning, this is the type of game you're either going to be instantly into or not at all. I like it. I really do. This Prison Architect, this Nomeria, they scratch a certain itch that I have from time to time, and I just really like this type of gameplay. Overall, I'm really impressed with Rimworld. It does some things extremely well that I really like. There's a lot of extra depth in there that you don't initially see. You know, when I first started learning it, I didn't really notice the depth, but it took some time to figure it out. Like, the UI is one of the things that they really need to work on, overhauling the UI and giving you information better. But like, you can zone areas for just like pastures and everything, because you can tame animals. In fact, when you spawn in, you're almost always going to spawn with some type of animal that you have control of there, be it Labrador Retriever or a Warg or a little Russell Terrier dog, cats. You can get all kinds of random animals. You can also then tame boars and elks and bucks and all kinds of other animals that are roaming around and everything, and create roaming herds. Well, it took me probably 15 hours of gameplay before I realized I could zone out an area, like highlight it with one of the control tools, and then the animals would only go there. I had issues very early on where like I would spawn with a little dog like a Russell Terrier, and he would be running around all over the map, and eventually something would get pissed off at him and eat him. And then one of my colonists would be all depressed because there was the colonist's dog, and their dog died, and then the colonist is depressed, and then the colonist goes nuts and attacks another colonist. And this brings me to my big problem with the game. The UI, you can learn it. The learning curve, eventually you'll get beyond it. It's intuitive enough that you can work your way through it by clicking through the buttons and everything. It's not too bad. But the game right now, for me, feels like it cascades far too quickly. There's a huge number of bad events that can happen. And even on the easy AI set to the base build mode, how bad things can go so quickly really annoys me. About the best I've done is I managed to live about 1.5 years with one character. So 1 full year, and then like into the fall of the second one. Before it went bad, I had like 8 people. But considering events aren't supposed to happen that quick, when they do go bad, and you'll see at the end of this video, they go bad so quickly. So for example here, what's going to happen is there's going to be a raid. Well, no, first there's a heat wave. And the heat waves, when they come in, they're like 120, 130 degrees. And if you leave your people out in the heat wave for more than a half a day or so, they'll start getting heat stroke. They'll start getting moody, right? They get very irritable and everything, and their psychic level, their mentality levels, they start to break down and they'll snap from it. They'll have like a mental breakdown because of it. Well, in order to deal with this, you need either dusters, so like cowboy duster coats, which take a lot of time and effort to create. You have to first research complex clothing, which takes, two people researching it. It takes it a good 15 minutes to be researched. Then you need to also have the material after you research this complex clothing. You need to have the bench down in order to produce it, so you need a crafting bench for it. But you also need the cotton and the leather in order to make it. And then it's going to take someone a certain amount of time to make each individual one. So in order to have a duster to go is really tough. To go beyond that, if you want to just air condition your area, you want to put AC into your buildings, well, you need to first research power. Once you research power, you can then research air conditioning. Once you've researched air conditioning, you can then build that. It's going to take a real long time. So if you're playing as a tribe that doesn't have these technologies to begin with, it's almost impossible to be ready for a heat wave, and you'll get hit by a heat wave after 2-day cycles, so 15 minutes into the game. And unless you specifically knew it was coming and focus just on that, and then your character is going to be starving, you could focus just on getting the dusters ready, and the dusters increase their tolerance to the heat. But in order to do that, you must have sacrificed having a place for your characters to sleep, having a food source and everything, so then they're going to be starving. So I'm rambling a little bit here, but basically what'll happen, and when you watch this video, first, we got hit with a heat wave. So I had to keep my characters inside. They weren't able to be outside working and everything because they were going to die of heat stroke. I did manage to throw together some air conditioning because we were the drop pod survivors, so we did have the basic technology, so we threw that together. But even the AC units were having a tough time keeping up with this heat wave, which then the characters, after the heat wave was in full-blown effect, I got a raid. A raid happened. So 2 guys with a raid show up. I take my characters out, and you have to set up and you have to fight off this raid. And I actually managed to fight off the raid, but we're out in the middle of the hot sun fighting off the raid. So after we fight the raid off, some of the characters are injured. The characters see dead bodies because you killed the raiders. So this causes one of the characters to basically mentally snap. The combination of the heat stroke, the dead body, and the fight and the wounds, she basically snaps. Well, after she snaps, she attacks one of the pets that I've tamed, the warg. She ends up killing the warg after knocking another person unconscious. She kills the warg. The warg was someone's pet, so the other person wakes back up from being unconscious from being in a fight, and their pet died, so they have a mental breakdown. They snap, and then I'm in this process of trying to get everyone treated and healed up. I get blood infections on one of the guys, so the one dude's going to die from an infection because he was my doctor and everyone else is unconscious from the heat wave. You can't get them to heal up, so they're going to die. And then, lo and behold, what happens? A lightning storm. They have this freak lightning storm, strikes just outside of my base, lights everything on fire, the whole place burns down. It's just this wave of terribleness that all happens. And this is on the easy AI setting designed for, or the easiest setting of the easiest AI is what we're playing on. So it rolls like that. And this isn't a rare occurrence. I've had so many times where I had one occurrence where first there was a blight. A blight kills off all your crops. After the blight, there was a solar flare which knocked out my AC unit or knocks out your power unit. The power, you can create freezers, right? And if you put food in a freezer, it lasts indefinitely. So I had a pretty good store of food and it was set up and everything. I was like, all right, the blight hurt, but I'll be okay. I have a stock of food ready to go in the freezer. Well, then a solar flare comes along, knocks out my power, the food spoils. As I'm trying to regrow the food, then nuclear fallout happens. And when nuclear fallout happens, it kills off everything in the area slowly. So they would plant down like 30 crops and 25 of the 30 would die from fallout. Plus then everyone was getting sick from wandering around the fallout, and this happened again in like a 4-day period. Boom, 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 boom. On the easiest AI settings. So that's my one complaint about the game. The game itself is really fun, but the AI scenarios, what happens, the snowballing makes it really hard to have a successful colony that lasts a long time. It's great when these things happen once out of every 4-5 games, but in my experience, they happen 5 out of 5 games. Like, it's 100% chance that eventually you're going to get this 3-4 event cyclone that happens and everyone's just going to die. Your colony's going to expire. I don't see how anyone's getting to the late game. With some more practice, some experience, maybe I'll get there. But right now, I think that's the one big complaint. The game needs some tweaks and balances to how its AI brings about these events, as they can wreck it and ruin they ruin 2 hours worth of work in the matter of a couple of minutes. Other than that though, I love it. I love Rimworld. It's great. And those little things can be done. I can always go into custom scenario and I can remove some of them. Like I could remove heat wave, I could remove blight to make it easier. I am playing, just the normal one, so I can't complain too much. I do have the tools to correct this, if I want to. I would just like to see some passes over the difficulty of the game to make it a little more manageable, at least early on. That would be great. But overall, I can't recommend it enough. If you like this type of game, Rimworld's a great one that I say is probably a must-have for people that like Dwarf Fortress style games. Alright, well there you have it. That's my take on Rimworld. Until next time, this has been Paler. Thanks for watching.